Let's talk about the intellectual life.
Let's do it.
There's a great book written by a great Dominican about that very topic.
There is indeed.
That's excellent.
I'm with you.
Let's talk about it. What does that even mean, and why should we be bothered? Because we're
Right.
intellectual beings.
Nailed it. So I think when people hear intellectual life, at first it sounds almost, un-American, which for you wouldn't be that big of a deal, but for me it would.
Really? Un-American?
Well, because hear me out.
All right.
So when we hear intellectual, I think sometimes we think like hoity-toity
Snooty.
or elitist or snooty. Yeah, it's like the kind of people that wear...
Cold bag coffee?
Yes, send me. It's the kind of people that wear sweater vests and ascots.
Circular glasses.
Yes.
Glasses like this, maybe?
And pocket protectors and like a little, whatever. I'm not going to, challenge people's sense of style.
Sure.
But we associate it with people who are like locked up in an ivory tower. They don't think about what's real in life. They don't actually have to deal with kids and changing diapers and like carpooling and picking up ladders for like rodent infestations in their attics, right? So like they're the kind of people that just get to like think about things and then they write weird stuff that actually doesn't correspond to reality, and then we call them intellectuals. What a blessing. So I think that we want to get away from that sense of intellectual. What we're talking about here is like a kind of democratic sense of intellectual, a truly American kind of sense of intellectual. Like you can drive a Ford F-150, you can have like a bald eagle patch on your leather jacket.
Don't tread on me flag hanging out the back.
Exactly, yeah. You can like look on like YouTube for like videos of F-35 Joint Strike Fighters and still be this kind of intellectual, okay? It's like waving wheat, Purple Mountain Majesty type of intellectual. So what do we mean? Well, it just means that you think about things, right? So at first, that sounds kind of, uninteresting, but most people don't necessarily think about things because we're really busy, or we're really distracted, or we find it very difficult, and then we fall asleep. So what does it mean to think about things? Well, just to think about what's most important. Let's build it up. So what kind of creatures are we? Well, we're animals, but we're a particular kind of animal, a rational animal. Or as Aristotle called us once, non-feathered bipeds. What's up, bro? So we're non-feathered bipeds.
All right.
So we share things with the beasts, our desires, our appetites, our sense knowledge, etc. But then we have these two powers that are distinctive. Like we are the only kind of material creation that have minds with which to know and hearts with which to love. So if that's the case, then you would think that what we are as human beings is going to be bound up with those powers because they're really like decisive, really determinative. And so like when you search the Christian tradition, when you talk about being made to the image of God, that's principally associated with knowledge and love, with intellect and with will. And will just means like the kind of desire that's born of understanding in a spiritual sense. So we are like the drama of our life is to develop those powers, to grow them. Because we are going to be only as satisfied as we are capacious of being satisfied. And the whole like pursuit of knowledge and of love is it's a story of growing our capacity for God. So like Aristotle, for instance, thinks that human perfection is bound up with contemplation. And sometimes when you hear contemplation, you think like a kind of whatever thing that only monks do. I don't know exactly how to describe it. But like you think contemplation and you like the first thought is like St. Pio of Pietrelcina. Actually, when I was on the plane this morning, I got into my seat and I was just like in seat B, which is that deadly spot between A and C. Sweet Christmas.
And not the pointy end either. You were back in coach and you are very tall.
Yeah, 27B, man. That was my jam. And, you're looking at the seat that's 26 inches in front of you, and then, like, you can already feel your butt.
And your ears.
Yeah, your butt's already starting to fall asleep. And I look over at the lady next to me.
Yeah.
And she's listening to an Opus Dei reflection.
No, that's wonderful.
I was like, what's up, baby?
Did you say hi?
And she had like a little...
Did you call her baby?
No, I didn't call her baby.
Good.
She had a little image of St. Pio of Pietrelcina. I was like, boom.
Did you say hi?
I did, yeah. We had a long combo.
That's wonderful.
And she showed me like a lot of sweet pictures from her most recent pilgrimage to Rome and to San Giovanni Rotondo. Okay, so when we think about... Okay, back on track, my bad. When we think about blah, blah, blah mysticism, we associate with like St. Pio, or like St. John of the Cross, or like St. Joseph Cupertino, who's like flying around with a bunch of angels.
What is happening?
Right. So we're not... That can be unhelpful if we associate contemplation just with great saints, okay? Like these 16th century Baroque saints who are always like being like, whatever.
That's actually a really good impersonation.
Thank you. I actually learned recently that mystical encounter that St. Teresa of Avila had is called the transverberation.
Oh, really?
That's such an awesome word. Yeah. She got transverberated.
What does that mean?
I have no idea.
Right.
I think it's something to be through
Changing
verberated.
Wording.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, so that's actually portrayed in the Berzini.
Flash does when he walks through walls. Anyway.
I shouldn't joke about holy things, but she was transverberated, and that's portrayed in Bernini's statue, which is right outside of the Parthenon there.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So we're like, contemplation, transverberation, crazy, I'll just change the diaper. Okay, no. What do we mean by contemplation? We mean thinking about things that are most truly true and most, really real. It means thinking about those things wherein our life comes to completion, or where our life is really bound up. Because if you were to ask somebody like, what are you like about? They're like, well, like I like NASCAR, and I'm into like botany. I'm like a member of my local Humboldt chapter, and I'm casually interested in primates. Beekeeping. Yeah, sure. I'm an amateur primatologist. Very interested in bonobos. But if you're like, yeah, like what do you like really? Like what are you about? And then you kind of get to these things like family. And then lamentably some people are just completely bound up with work. But like they recognize if they're just working to work more, if they're taking their recreation just to be fresh for work so that they can work harder and more efficient, like there's something, and that's why like a lot of millennials have problems with cubicles. So, but you get to this question of like, where do you hang your hat? Where do you rest? Where do you play? Where do you enjoy life? And eventually you're going to have to get to like contemplation. And some people do it with like nature, like Yosemite National Park is my cathedral. It's like, fine, for sure. If you ever think that, just consider the fact that it could have been a reservoir, because there's a huge valley right next to Yosemite called Hetchy Hetch, and the government had a choice. They're like, we need to back up a lot of water so that people south of here can drink. And they backed up Hetchy Hetch, but they could have backed up Yosemite. So you're like, wow, dude, Alex Honnold free soloing this sweet El Cap thing. You're like, yeah, that could be underwater. What's up? Okay, so yeah, but like people have some sense that it's contemplative. It's about thinking and loving, and that we being, really. And it's not bound up with what you do. And that if it is, it's always going to be a rat race. So that we should cultivate a sense of thinking about the right things and loving the right things, because that's where we are most properly human. That's where we are fully alive. So I think that everyone is called to that kind of intellectual life, and it means a little bit of reading, but more principally, it means praying,
I think it was Chesterton who said something like, cows are satisfied in the meadows, men smoke discontentedly in the bars. But that does go to your point that since we're rational beings, we actually won't be satisfied living like a beast, because we've been made for more.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where the intellectual life comes in, to satisfy those natural potencies we have and desires.
And it involves a little bit of restlessness.
Definitely. Gosh,
because like, we have that expression, he's as happy as a pig in a poke. It's like...
Different in Australia? Continue.
Right, yeah. So
much more offensive in Australia.
Right, cheers. But the idea is like, if you're completely like satisfied, something's gone wrong, right? We think about it as almost smug or like overly self-involved, but like we should be like starved to our crazy bones, but like with eyes wildly alive.
Yes.
I'm going to quote some poetry. I only know like 3 poems. All right, here it comes.
I love it.
George Herbert. You ever heard of George Herbert? He's one of these Anglican divines. He has this poem called The Pulley, and he describes this scene where God is creating man, and in the first lines he's just lavishing on man all of these gifts. So beauty flowed, then wisdom, honor, pleasure, and then there's this kind of creative pause, and he says, when almost all was out, God made us stay, perceiving that alone of all his treasure, rest at the bottom lay. For if I should bestow this jewel also on my creature, he would adore my gifts instead of me, and rest in nature, not the God of nature. So both should losers be. So let him keep the rest, but keep them with repining restlessness. Let him be rich and weary, that at least if goodness lead him not, yet weariness may toss him to my breast.
Glory.
You're just like, bah! So like, the contemplative life is like living out of that restlessness. It's the recognition that I am not yet wholly made, and there is only one person who can make me through and through. And I have to spend my days in repining restlessness, but like trying to recover that Godward gaze, right? Because that is what I am made for, and I will never be content with anything less. Because like when you go to hang your heart, there's only one thing that can support the weight. And if you try to hang it on something that can't, that's sin.
We're getting dangerously close to the argument from desire, but it's a good argument. I think the happiest I have ever been in my entire life was with my wife, Cameron.
Yeah.
We weren't having sex, although those are good occasions too. I was with my friend Elisa and her husband Chester. We were in San Diego and we went to this little farmer's market, as cool people in San Diego are wont to do. drinking
Wearing-
kale shakes and things.
Warby Parker glasses.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then we drove our car down to the beach as the sun was setting, and we were body surfing.
Sunset Cliffs, La Jolla.
It wasn't in La Jolla, I forget where it was. Okay. But the sun, as it was coming down, made the sky this lovely mango color. And I just remember thinking, I've never been this happy, ever. And yet I am very dissatisfied. But I think a lot of uninteresting people would want to preach at me at that point and say, well, why? And I'm like, you don't get it. It's like when I've been the happiest, it's always felt like a foretaste of something more, be that in marital love or on the porch with that cool breeze and my children playing. It's not enough. There is this yearning for John of the Cross. I know not what. Isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what I love. Do you like John of the Cross? His poetry?
So I haven't read much John of the Cross. I've been told not to read him until I'm 40. Until I've had sufficient
Well, I've made a
experience
mistake
of life.
then, but here's a quote, since you quoted poetry at me. Here's part of his poem. He says, like a fevered man who loathes any food he sees and desires I know not what which is so gladly found. Isn't that lovely? Yeah. As someone who's just had surgery and has been fevered and I want, but I don't know what I want. Because I don't want any of this. I don't want coffee, I don't want chocolate, I don't want to run or anything.
Yeah.
I don't know what I want, and that's his name for God. I know not what, huh?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just like there's a long tradition of people searching and ruling things out and not yet coming to, like the name or the term, or not yet giving whatever, clear expression to their desire. But even that searching, and I think you alluded to the fact of Jordan Peterson having such a kind of appeal now. People have a sense that he's doing it sincerely, and that people find attractive. Yeah. Could he probably benefit from traditional Christian teaching? Would it help him with discoveries that he himself has not yet made? Probably. But his mode of proceeding has just a very, very potent evangelical effect, without saying it's introducing people to the gospel per se, but it's showing people how to desire, and to be unsatisfied with half measures or half truths, and if that means for him building it up from the foundation, so be it. It serves a purpose of reorienting, just reorienting people's loves.
Yo, thanks for watching. You can watch the entire episode on YouTube if you want. You can listen to it at The Matt Fradd Show by subscribing on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And feel free to support me, patreon.com/MattFradd.